The situation for Christians in Iraq today remains very dangerous. Tonight, we'll talk with two special guests about the hope that the gospel of Christ brings to the struggling community of believers who find themselves surrounded by bullets, bombings, kidnappings, and murder. So please stay with us. Thank you, and welcome. I'm Father Mitch, Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. And tonight we're going to do exactly that. Our guests are here to spread the word about the ongoing danger that Christians face in Iraq and in greater Middle East, and also the hope that is still present there as well. Archbishop Warda has been a priest in Iraq for almost 20 years. He's a member of the Redemptorist Order, and for the last 2 years, he has been the Archbishop of Erbil in northern Iraq. Joan is EWTN's Rome Bureau Chief, and she's here to give an American layperson's perspective of her recent travels to Iraq in 2010. So please welcome Archbishop Warda and Joan to our show. Sayyidina, welcome. Joan, good to see you.
Great to be here.
Well, welcome to you, both coming long distances from Rome, of course, for you, Joan, and from northern Iraq for you, Sayyidina. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you.
We hear and we talk about some of the situation for Christians in various parts of the Middle East. There are a number of ongoing struggles throughout the region. But the news that we get about northern Iraq is still somewhat sparse. And I'd really appreciate if you would tell us, what is the situation for the community of Christians with whom you work? As a matter of fact, first of all, tell us who is this community? What rite is the most common community of Christians where you live?
In the north of Iraq, we have a Christian community. Majority would be Chaldeans, and there is Assyrians. There is also Syrian Catholic and Syrian Orthodox presence there. This community has a deep history there. Most of the community have been forced to leave their villages in the 50s and 60s and 70s when the war started between the Kurdish rebels and the central government, and they left their villages to Baghdad and Mosul, the big cities, to look for safe haven because of that war.
One question to have people understand better. The Kurdish people are not Arabs, correct?
Yes, they are not Arabs.
They're a different ethnic community descended from very ancient people in the region.
Yes, and they live in the Kurdistan area, north of Iraq, southern east of Turkey, northwest of Iran. That's the main area for them.
And they have their own distinctive language?
Distinct language, culture, habits.
Yep.
So we lived together for many years, but because of the war, they were looking for independence, and the Iraqi central government responded with force against this wish. So most of the Christian villages were cut in the middle of this war, so they had to leave either because of the war or the central government issued a warning and a decision to evacuate all these villages. So in the 50s, 60s, 70s, most of these villages were evacuated. I mean, my family went to Baghdad. I was born in Baghdad. When they went there, they knew nothing about Arabic. They know only Surath, which is one of the daughters of the Aramaic language, and Kurdish, because they lived in the Kurdistan area.
So, and that's, again, another important element for our people to understand, that the Christian community is also not an Arab community. It's a distinct ethnic group with its own language and culture as well.
Exactly, exactly. We speak Surath in various dialects, and this is one of the daughters of the Aramaic language, the language of our Savior and our mother and the disciples. So when they went to these big cities, they've started their new life from zero. And in the fall of the collapse of the Saddam's regime, and exactly in 2004, the violence started against our community for various reasons. One of them was because we were Christians. So bishops, priests, Christians were killed. Others
and why were Christians targeted?
We are a very vulnerable community, small in number, and always, I mean, looking for peace and reconciliation. Of course, to attack Christians, there were people attacking Christians because we were Christians. I mean, the collapse of the regime gave the whole ground for extremists to be there, and they've attacked Christians because we were Christians. Others attacked Christians for political reasons, to make the whole political process fail and to show that the whole issue was really a mess. Other for economical reasons.
Well, what economic reasons would they have to attack Christians?
Kidnapping, asking for ransom, taking their homes, taking their properties, shops, whatever they have, cars, whatever they have. So those families were forced again to leave these big cities, Baghdad and Mosul and Basra and Kirkuk, and come back again to Kurdistan area and their original villages. Now the Kurdish government have started what we call an emergency program for housing. That was their response. But of course, when you give house, you need also jobs.
Yes.
And that was not available. So for example, in so many villages which were rebuilt, and these were historically Christian villages, in 2009, for example, we had in one village called Aradin, over 113 families settled there. Today, you hardly find 60 families because they left. There is no jobs, no future for them. In our diocese, Erbil, which is the capital of Erbil, the capital of Kurdistan region, the situation was much better. We have received over 3,500 families from Baghdad and Mosul and these violent area, most of which have settled because they've sold their property in Baghdad and purchased another one in Erbil. But still, what we call the pastoral demands is so huge there. You have to at least prepare churches for them. We don't have enough churches for those families, at least.
So again, folks understand, when these communities lived in Baghdad and Kirkuk and Mosul and other places, there were plenty of churches.
Yes. Yes.
But because of this emigration from the cities where they had refuge,
yes,
now they have to start all over again.
All over again.
In the Kurdistan region.
Yes. In Baghdad and Mosul, they've closed churches. Yeah. We have to build new churches. I have 2 areas. Each of these areas have over 1,300 families without a church building. So you see the demands that's there, the pastoral demands that's there. Of course, we thank God that we have enough priests to be with them, and there is also good vocations coming, but the actual need it's for building churches. building churches for this new community.
Yes, yes. Now, Joan, you've had an opportunity to go to this region of Iraq. What, did you go only to Kurdistan, or did you also go to other parts of Iraq?
Just the northern part, Kurdistan, but then we did go into Kirkuk, and I went into the diocese of Mosul, but not the city of Mosul. So, so Baghdad, Basra were not part of my trip. Right. But I was there twice in 2010, and the first trip of 8 or 9 days was one of the biggest eye-openers I've had in my personal and professional life. Much of what you've heard from him, I discovered on my own, visiting schools, villages, the homes of people, the very, very humble homes of people. Of course, the Middle Eastern hospitality is very, very famous. But I saw the need. I saw the joy people had in their faith. I saw hope that they had, that they wanted to have for the future, and the hope that, about building schools, about building hospitals, giving people jobs, and then you restore their dignity. So these people who've moved, because they had things, they had possessions. And as he said, the kidnapping and so forth, if you would frighten a family bad enough, or if you killed the head of the family in Baghdad, the rest of the family would look for a safe haven north. You take what you could put in a car and go north, and in the meantime, your home is occupied by the people who may have killed or kidnapped a family member. Right. So they leave this violence, but it's their home. Any one of us, anybody listening knows what their home means to them, and where you were born. So having to recreate the life does mean, as the Archbishop said, it does mean a huge need, economic, because where are you going to get the money to build the schools and the hospitals? And I know anytime anything has put in, this is another thing I learned there, visiting many schools. I visited so many, like primary schools and kindergartens, was that the feeling was when things, institutions were put, organizations, in the hands of Christians, of Catholics, the Muslims would be the #1 group to also come and help, and they saw where a Catholic education created a certain class of people, your doctors and lawyers and whatever, and they would work side by side, hand by hand. I saw it in the schools. It was just utterly magnificent, because they do want the peace. They do want to live side by side, notwithstanding religious or other sectarian differences.
So this situation of danger has roots in some enemies' political issues, some religious issues, some economic issues, depending on the various groups. And the Christians have moved themselves to Kurdistan, where it sounds as if they have more of a welcome.
Yes.
It's perhaps the Kurdish people have, were accustomed to the Christian community being, again, in their midst as two ancient communities living side by side.
Yes, exactly. But once you come there without property, without a job, means you come without hope. And that is still the big question for our community, especially the young people who are studying in the public universities, and some of them started to study in the private universities. But it's always the question, what's the future that we have after this years of violence? So many families, when they go back and think about what happened in the 50s and 60s, and at least their settlement in Baghdad, and the whole issue again of war, they would always, and of course thinking of the present crisis that we have in the Middle East, they would wonder if there is a hope. The problem is that as a church leader, I cannot force them, or I cannot, ask them to stay it's their right. It's their right to make the decision whether to leave, whether to stay. Of course, we could always remind our community that the past, the roots of the Christianity, which goes back to the 1st century, the history, the good witness that we have given, all this culture, we could always be could be always there. But a father of a family of 2 or 3 children would wonder always, okay, who would be assure me, Sayyidina, that things would go better? Are you going to at least guarantee for me a job that I could earn a decent money from it to raise my family and to raise my children?
And a job for those children when they become young adults.
Yes.
In a place that they can also get a home to establish their own families. Yeah. These are the kinds of...
Yes, it's really, when you take all these issues together, it's a very, very, very difficult situation. Yes. It's a very very heavy cup to drink. And yes, we know and we do believe that a true Christianity is a persecuted Christianity. And we've been baptized every day to give this witness. But sometimes, as a human being, you feel the burdens of this mission. Yes, we would like to stay, our community would love to stay, and everyone would like to stay where things are there and to make also the contribution. We are not there to live on charity. We would like also to make our contribution. And we have the right to do so, and we have also the experience for some. I mean, if you read the history of Iraq, you could know by the 8th century the Christians were the leaders in teaching philosophy and teaching all the arts, and they were the famous doctors of the Khalifa of Islam, the Imam of Islam was a Christian, and you could name all these achievements.
One of the points that many Westerners don't know is that it was the Chaldean and Syriac speaking Christian monks and priests who preserved the writings of Aristotle, Plato,
yes,
the Greek doctors and astronomers, and so many other areas. That the reason that they were Christian doctors is that they preserved ancient medical texts.
yes,
And they taught the Arab invaders,
yes,
these things.
exactly.
And that the flourishing Arab culture of the 8th and 9th and 10th centuries, Middle East, was because Christians shared this knowledge with the Arab invaders.
We were responsible for the House of Wisdom
Yep.
in Baghdad. Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, was run by the Christians.
And what was the House of Wisdom?
You see, when the Arab invaders came and they established what we call a state, after these big raids and wars, they've established estates where there is a need for law and constitutions, right, and to learn about the wisdom of the other nations.
And again, so people understand why that was important. The Arab invaders had been Bedouin tribesmen.
Yes.
They didn't have a settled, civilized life until they conquered these other countries.
And until they settled and established their empire in Baghdad.
Right.
In Baghdad.
Right.
The Khalifa, the head of the Islamic nation.
And Khalifa in English is Caliph.
Caliph.
Yeah.
Invited the Christians to come to Baghdad, and we have Ishaq al-Nainawi, the others. The Christians had already translated these books of wisdom from Greek to Syriac. It
Yes.
was already there.
Yes.
And now there was a new task to translate this from Syriac to Arabic.
Yes.
And then the 9th and 10th century, we have seen some of the Arab philosophers from the Arab nations. So the contribution was there until the 1960. Our schools was one of the famous.
Yes.
by 1974, the Iraqi government, the Ba'ath Party, nationalized all the Christian schools and taking their property, and you could feel that the whole community said, well, there is something missing now. There is something missing now, because you had over 20 schools there. I mean, the famous politicians now, or the famous people of Iraq of the 20th century, and were a graduate of the Jesuit school, were
Yes.
a graduate of this school belongs to the sisters. So
Every time I go to meetings where there are a lot of Iraqis, and they find out I'm a Jesuit,
they could,
one after another comes up, I went to Hekima. I was a student,
Yes.
and they say it with such great pride.
Yeah.
You know, they loved it. But one point that I also, you know, from what you had just said about this history, to let people in the West become aware, is that it was this translation work and education work after the Arab conquests, from which the Arabs began their schools. They brought them to Cairo and other parts of Spain. And from these ideas came the Western ideas to make the universities.
yes,
And that there is a direct intellectual connection between what the Christians of the Chaldean and Syriac communities did to pass on knowledge, and our universities, and that the universities are this Christian, you know, institution, and are rooted in your community.
yeah. The House of Wisdom was the first, if we might say, a first university
Yes.
where students gathered around teachers, where they've read a book, they've discussed that book, and they've developed upon these ideas that's there in these books of philosophy. You see, the contribution is there, and the community would recognize it. Until now, that, I mean, losing, for example, the Baghdad College, which belongs to the Jesuits, was one of the biggest lost for the whole education system. And the whole education system collapsed because Iraq, with Saddam, entered in so many wars.
Right.
And the culture of violence was there. I mean, the childs were raised to use guns from the beginning. The TV was always with corrupted, pictures of wars. So here's our message, here's our mission as a Christians there, to give another culture, to raise our kids on another culture of peace, culture of respect for the others who is different. And as a Christians, we are capable of that, because we have so many qualifications, which needs, of course, a training, and there is a capacity of also going outside and help. We have these capabilities, we have this human capacity, and the most important is that the Iraqi society trusts our educational and health system.
See, that's one of the tasks that your community is working to rebuild now in northern Iraq.
Yes.
That the educational enterprise
Yes.
is, so much part of your very roots and your gift to the rest of civilization, and reestablishing it as refugees from the big cities into northern Iraq.
Yes.
Your homeland, again, your earlier home, is one of the big tasks that you have right now.
It's a long process. It needs time, it needs patience, but we are so committed for that. I mean, when you think to raise a generation, you need 12 years, but it's okay with the trust that we have from the community, and be sure that all the Christian churches, the Chaldean, the Assyrian, Syrian Catholic, Syrian Orthodox, Armenians, all of them would like definitely to live this message. And it's not just my diocese, I have to speak also about the others. All of them, if things would be better in concerning security, definitely they would love. Already the churches have in Baghdad right now have opened schools since 2004. The sisters also have schools in Baghdad. It's packed. In Basra, there are 2 kindergartens filled with Muslims. And the families, they are so happy that their kids are there. And sometimes, when I was in Baghdad, my church was the first church which was bombed in 2004, on the 1st of August 2004. And my response was to this attack is to build a school. I've said, well, this community which allowed those people to come and enter our district and install this car in front of the church, and we had a mosque just attached to our church, this community needs education. And we start building that school, and we finished it in 2005. So many Muslims families were there to register their sons and daughters. I've told them, well, it's a Christian school. We are going to pray in the morning. Okay, Father, don't worry. Let our students pray with you. Okay, we are going to sing hymns. Okay, let them sing with you. I want my kids to be here in the church. I want them to learn how to be peaceful. I want to educate them here to get a better knowledge. We are tired of this culture of violence and stealing and kidnapping. I want my kids here in this church.
And the Muslims also have a confidence that the Christian school will teach values of respect and dignity.
Yes. I remember one of the people who is now a very high officer in the Kurdistan government. He said when he was kids, he went to a Christian school. He said that the sisters made sure that the right person who teach Islamic religion would be in our school. He said, I've learned my religion well in the Christian school, not outside, because the man, he was a Muslim, of course, and the teacher was a Muslim. But he said that the sisters were looking carefully who would be the teacher, the right teacher to teach Islam to those kids, because of course we have to be aware that there's Sunni and Shia, these 2 big traditions you have to respect. You cannot give, you cannot give an Islamic religion class without having this in mind. Otherwise you are going to enter in another issues. And here is that what we could do as a Christians to bridge between these 2 communities.
See, again, a lot of Americans hear about the Shia and the Sunni Muslim, and we have generally a vague idea that they have a dispute, but there were political issues at the beginning that also became theological issues as the communities went their separate ways, and that they have fairly different, approaches towards Islam. They both use the same Quran.
Yes.
But they have different approaches about interpreting the Quran.
Different approaches, different practice, different Islamic festivals, and this gets very tense at times. So many issues of killing and hatred is there. It's deep in the history. Of course, the politicians have used this. It's a very fertile, issues for them. Have used this, but back again, what we could do as a Christian in such situation, we cannot just for example, in Baghdad, I cannot separate myself as a Christian and say, well, I have to look for my community, and in Baghdad, I have to face this reality and also make a choice. And the choice is how to be a bridge between these 2 communities, and how these 2 communities get together in one class, in one big, for example, show, in one big activity. It's always taking the right choice, and the only choice being a bridge for peace between these 2 communities.
I have to be a bridge breaker right now, because it's time for us to take a break in time. But we're going to come back in just a couple of minutes. So please stay with us, and we'll continue on with our interview of Archbishop Warda and Joan Lewis. So please stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. You know, we'd love to help you keep up to date with news on Christians throughout the whole Middle East. EWTN tries to cover some of it, and so does the National Catholic Register. If you want to find out more about these issues, please go to www.ewtn.com and you'll see various links there about news that's going on as it occurs. So we'd love to have you keep that up. Also, we want to remind you that if you have a chance to come and visit us here at EWTN, we'd love to have you be part of our studio audience, as well as come to the masses and visit here at the network. You can contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966. Or also go to www.ewtn.com, and the Pilgrimage Department will help you with a variety of issues, places to stay, the scheduling of everything that goes on here, and information about how to get from here over to Hanceville and visit the sisters there as well. All right, good to have you here with us. And Joan, because you had been over there, do you have any other reflections about some of the situation in northern Iraq?
Especially, yes, on the economic front, because as the Archbishop has said, the need for jobs for people emigrating from Basra, Baghdad, north, they have to have homes. You need money for that. You have to have jobs. One of the things that impressed me when I was visiting a lot of families and pastors and bishops, because I think I saw every diocese, if I recall correctly, in Kurdistan, was the fact that the possibility that these people saw for bringing new industries in. Some of them had ideas for local products that they could make, or I hate to use the word souvenir, but I mean it could be dress wear or whatever. Then they saw the possibility of bringing in Coca-Cola, bringing in some major company, because one of the things I did discover was this safety. I never felt anything but safe in all of my travels in Kurdistan. Oh yes, absolutely. And even when we would cross any checkpoints into Kirkuk or the Diocese of Mosul, I felt totally safe. And but to bring in new industry, to give these people hope, here's job. To bring in new industry, you have to start building. So you're going to employ your bricklayers and electricians. Then you've created a factory or whatever, and then you're going to hire people for that. And so I heard that wherever I went, the need to bring in industry. This is a safe area. This is good. We have or will build the infrastructure. And then once you have that, you feed a family, you send the kids to school. Everything that the Archbishop has been talking about can come to fruition.
Well, as you had said, you know, people are not looking to live on charity and continue. They have such a strong tradition of being well-educated entrepreneurs, you know, building businesses and doing contributions to the whole of society through economic activity, intellectual activity, as well as their Christian faith. So this is one of the things that people are seeking.
Yes, until now we had been on the path of charity. I must say, so many Catholic organizations, good people are supporting us. I could mention some of them, like Church to the Aid to the Church in Need, Missio, Miserio. You could name so many of these Catholic organizations who responded generously to our needs. But we have to take another path. It's the path of opportunity. I don't like you to give me always fish. I know how to fish also. It's not just, but the problem is that here what maybe many of the Americans will not understand, that that the political system is in Iraq is based on a tribal and family connections. It's not, I mean, most of the Americans would say, well, we went there and we have established a new state with a constitution which was voted for by many Iraqis. And why all these things is happening? What's wrong? What's wrong is that the political process is based on a tribal and family connections. Yes. And this creates another forms of political tribes. In a way that if you don't have what we call a strong support from the inside of this political process, you get nowhere. And that would leave some of the people, like the Christians, at the margins. They cannot benefit. So we know how to fish, but nobody is allowing us. There is no, I mean, a lake. There is nothing for us there. So we have to create our own lake in a sense to teach other also how to fish. So within this what we call political what we call immature political process which is happening there, and there is no other way but this way, which needs time and needs to be patient, but the time is not in our advance because we are losing more and more people.
See, that's another element that is important to bring up. Nearly, I imagine, nearly every member of your community has relatives who live in America, Europe, yes, Australia, and so on.
Yes.
That they, almost all of them, have family members who have left the country for various reasons. Sometimes the political problems, sometimes economic opportunities, wide variety of issues. But the community of Chaldean Christians in Detroit and San Diego is huge. In Chicago, it's there. Assyrian Orthodox are in Chicago and elsewhere. And so many Christians have left. And these Christians, I'm sure, wonder, do I have more of a future here or with the majority of my Christian tribe that has left?
Well, the roots of our Christianity is there in Iraq. No matter how they will flourish here, if the roots will die, the whole tree is going to die. I mean, we know this. The problem is that they come here in a big number. We have over 100,000 now in Detroit. And they are flourishing, and thank God I visited them, and there is new vocations, priestly vocations coming from this new generation, which is a sign of hope. There was sisters, novices for the sisters. No, it's a good news. The bishops were telling me that the bishop was telling me that he had to build a new 2 churches, which is another sign of hope here in
Detroit.
In Detroit.
And also in San Diego.
It's growing. It's growing.
Amazing.
And the people are committed towards the church. They are very loyal to the church, and they are building these churches, contributing a lot. But when still, all of them would say that the roots are there in Iraq. Yes, we are a minority. We will be less and less, but the issue is how effective we are there in Iraq. And that's the task of the church. Yes. And that's the task of the whole Catholic Church, of course, to support this venerable community, which we have a commitment to stay there, and to help us not to live at the margins, not to be always on the path of charity, no, to use this big opportunity. There is a way. We could start from Kurdistan, and later on, God would help, things would get better in Baghdad and Mosul. Our schools could expand, our civil services could expand, our example could expand. There are various of activities as a Christian we could still walk on successfully and peacefully. So I see that there is an important to raise this awareness that the roots of the Christianity is in the Middle East, and when you, I mean, when coming back to your question, the people here would always say our Christianity would be alive if also in Iraq the Christianity there would be an effective and alive. This is a very common belief here among my community, and they would always tell, Father, Sayyidina, our minds and prayers is always with you there. Even if they are well settled here, but still their minds is there.
You have something to add to that, Joan?
Yes, I do. I was after my first visit to Iraq, I went to Beirut simply because that's where my flight plan was. I was in Beirut and I did visit some Iraqis who had emigrated. They didn't know exactly where they were going, the US or Australia. But they said they would love to really be back in their country. And I did even hear that in talking during the Synod in 2010, how many Iraqis.
And this is the Synod on the Middle Eastern
this
Christians.
Synod in 2010 for the Middle East. And of course, the Pope hopes to go, if conditions allow, in September 14, 15, and 16 to Beirut to present to the bishops the document he wrote as a result of that Synod. But again, I did feel this in these people who were forced to leave, and it could have been kidnapping or other violence, but they'd love to go back to their roots. They want to be the active Chaldean Christians. They want to be in the country of their birth. And I know a number of people in the U.S., in San Diego. I talked to Bishop Jamo recently in Rome. The Chaldeans in San Diego, the Chaldeans in Detroit, some of the newcomers, they would love to go back to the land of their birth if that allowed. But we have to look what he was talking about, the opportunities, the building, the schools, the homes. You don't just pull up roots in Baghdad and go to Kurdistan. You've got to have a place to replant those roots.
Yeah, I mean, when Christianity, God forbid, will die in Iraq, you are not, I mean, just losing a community. You are losing a culture. You are losing a language. You are losing a heritage, which is, I mean, it's a big loss. It's a big loss. I mean, nobody would speak Surah anymore, for example. Nobody would celebrate the Chaldean Mass as it was written. I mean, because here with the second generation, you have to, and they've started already celebrating Mass in English, in Germany, in German, in Holland, in Sweden. So, I mean, nobody would celebrate the Mass as it was. I mean, it's losing a culture which is also a richness for the Catholic Church. I mean, that's the what we call the strength of the Catholic Church. It has all these, I mean, cultures and heritage, which enrich this church with a variety of theological reflections, and with it's the strength of the Catholic Church. So, I mean, supporting the Chaldean Church is strengthening the Catholic Church at the same time. Yes. We are not apart from the Catholic Church. Exactly. We are there, and we are there also to enrich the whole culture all over the world.
And see, this is an element that is also missed in dealing with other parts of the Middle East. And the Coptic Christians, because they're Coptic Catholics as well as Coptic Orthodox majority, but they also are high risk in the loss of that language and culture is a great loss.
Yes.
And of course the Maronites in Lebanon would be a tremendous loss. It's all over the Middle East that these Christian communities are experiencing risk as this turmoil continues to boil up throughout the region. And it's very difficult. For the most part, the Christians of Palestine and Israel have left. You know, there aren't many left there at all. And that's a loss in that community as well, because of some of the reasons about education and other bridge building that you also see for yourselves in Iraq. This is true there.
Yes, and we've been there in the Middle East, as a bridge of peace, and also we were there also to bridge between the West and the East. Our schools, as you know, there have welcomed so many professors, have made possible for the Arabs world, also even in the modern history, to have this kind of enculturation. There is, I mean, yes, the dangers and the challenges that we are facing there goes back and would remind us about what's important in our Christianity. Back again, we believe that, yes, a true Christianity is a persecuted Christianity. But after all of these years, we also believe that the persecution strengthened our community, and made them aware about why they are attacking us. What's there that they don't like, or that they challenge them to attack us. So it gives us back and reflect us back again to our Christian message, and hear why they are attacking us. It's because we have Jesus. It's because we have a salvation to give to the world. But this is a very painful path, and sometimes
I'm sure that you knew Archbishop Bulos Faraj Raho.
Yeah.
He was killed in Mosul, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And another was Father Raghid Ghani.
Yes.
He was also killed. And I think that there have been some others as well, correct?
Well, since 2003, over 2,000 Christians were killed. We have over 13 priests who were kidnapped and killed. Over 25 churches were bombed, and some of them were destroyed completely. Some of them are locked now, closed now. 44% of the Iraqi asylum seekers are Christians now in Lebanon and
to understand that figure, 44% of asylum seekers are Christians. But Christians are what percentage of Iraqi society?
Well, in 2003, we were around 900,000.
Out of how many million?
Out of 22 millions.
Okay, so
now we hardly are 300,000.
And so as such a tiny minority in this larger society, still nearly half of the asylum seekers come from this tiny minority,
yes.
Showing that brings out the serious pressure,
yes.
that the Christian community experiences.
Yes, yes, it's a big pressure. I mean, yes, we have paid a huge price for this changing of the whole regime and for the whole, what they call liberation
yes.
process. We paid because at the beginning so many people were attacking us because they thought that we were the one who invited the Americans to come.
They thought the Christians invited the Americans
to come.
I don't think we received your invitation.
No,
no.
I do believe
no.
that we haven't sent an invitation.
And one of the very important points is that before the Iraq War, Pope John Paul was very insistent not to go to war.
Yes.
He kept on telling both sides this should not occur.
Yeah, war is a very, dangerous decision to take because we being put on the what we call collateral damage.
Yes.
That's it. Unfortunately for this, but here there is a moral obligation towards any decision that you are going to take. Those people who've been suffering because of these decisions should be taken care, and you have to deal with their issues, with their needs. You cannot say sorry. That's the reason of always telling the people that you could help, that anyone could help. Anyone could help in raising awareness. Anyone could help in spreading the news. Anyone could help in raising awareness of the politicians when they make their decisions to take care of all these minor issues here and there, because this affects the life of so many people.
Well, one of the things that I imagine you have to deal with is that there are other priests and parishes still in Baghdad, and I guess Mosul too?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Are you able to help them as well? Or do you keep contact?
There is a contact now between us, and there is also some. We've managed in May 2012 to conduct a workshop for the priests of the 7 Chaldean dioceses in Iraq. 28 priests attended, and you could hear from them the difficulties and the pastoral challenges that they are facing. Some of them would like still to conduct a catechism, but they don't have the enough financial resources to help them to bring the kids from their homes, because it's somehow they live in a very far area from their parishes. So these financial aids, they've said it's very important for them. The catechism, as you may know, it's being conducted only on Friday because it's a public holiday.
Right.
So we use
yes,
this day.
Again, a lot of folks don't realize that Friday is the main day of prayer for Muslims.
Yes.
And so Friday is a day off.
Day off. So as a Christian, we use our churches for catechism in the morning until the evening for various, from K to 12 and in different forms. So the priest will tell you that there is a difficulty. There is a difficulty because also one of the effects that we have that after 1991 and after 2003, we have so many evangelical groups coming and start saying, well, we are inviting you to convert to Christianity, forgetting that Christianity is there since since the 1st century.
St. Thomas was the first apostle to come to northern Iraq.
Yes,
and start the church.
So those groups are coming and believing that Christianity is not there, and they've started stealing members of our community to create a community of 20 and 50 of 100, and this have weakened the Christianity in Iraq more and more, because we, our Christians, belong to 9 apostolic churches there. Right. And each one has its own traditions and centuries, and there is good relationship between us. And here we have a new communities coming and making the whole community weaker and weaker more and more. So when you conduct a catechism, you have to attract those students, at least to give them transportation from their homes to the parish and back again. So the priest in Baghdad and Mosul will tell you that they have a difficulty in that issue, providing these help. Here there is a way of help. And back again, the Catholic aid agencies are really helpful of that, but it's not enough.
Yes. Well, thank you both. I mean, we're running out of time at this point. It's a great struggle, but it's important for Americans and other people who are listening to us around the world to know more about the situation that is going on, the work that the church is accomplishing, and the great task of the future, to which many of us can contribute, both in terms of charity toward the church in northern Iraq, as well as, you said, Joan, to contribute to building up financial possibilities so the community can have an ongoing life. Sayyidina, would you join me in giving a blessing to our audience? May Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we are able to bring you this program and all the other programs, what Joan does in Rome, and so many other kinds of programs on this network, because this network is brought to you by you. You make it possible. So please, make sure that you keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill. And we'll be able to pay all of our bills too. Thank you, and God bless.